Hello, everyone. This is Carol Dimitrov with OPA Community Outreach, and today we're really pleased to have Gemini Brett with us, and he's going to be talking about sacred astronomy as taught by the mysterious glyphs. The symbols we use in modern times to represent the astrological signs are veiled vows to the marriage of heaven and earth. And Gemini states that although he cannot tell us exactly when the sign glyphs arrive on the scene, this presentation will reveal them to undeniable devices of tropical astronomy. And as we journey together in the shadows of these mysteries, we will find fascinating light that shines upon a potential need for us to reframe our zodiacal heritage and therefore the very history of astrology. More importantly, these symbols will star today as professors of a cosmic curriculum devoted to renaturing astrology. And a little bit about Gemini Brett. He is a leader in the movement to renature astrology by integrating our two-dimensional charts with the infinite living sky. He is an inspiring educator, shamanic Starry Teller, and a world-renowned astronomy-for-astrologers authority who recently created the astronomy curriculum for OPA Certification. Brett's terrestrial translations of the celestial conversation expressed through the ancient arts of sacred geometry, musical harmony, embodied astronomy, and number magic activate seasoned sages as much as initiate students new to the cosmic curriculum. And then for more information on Gemini's work, please visit him at geminibrett.com. Okay, it's all yours. And Gemini, you are muted. Let me unmute you.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, OPA. It's an honor to be invited to share and to teach, and this has become really one of my favorite subjects. My beloved Anna recently said, hey, why don't you make that a presentation? Because I just keep sneaking these things into every presentation I do. And she said, Brett, that's a presentation in and of itself. And so the good news was I had all the material ready to go. But then, of course, I had to re-record all these animations and try to make more polished versions. So we're going to look at a lot of slides, and we're going to see a lot of films, and we'll learn a bit about the astronomy of our craft, but to do so in a way through vehicles of images that we're all very familiar with. I think it's an interesting thing that nobody's been able to tell me, including Robert Hand, like when the glyphs that we use for the signs today first arrived on the scene. Consensus seems to be certainly not in Hellenistic times, but rather more around the medieval period, or maybe even some of them not until the Renaissance and fed through the alchemical tradition. So I think it's something that we kind of take for granted, right? That there's so many different stories, and I've seen beautiful kind of spiritual and mystical and psychological applications of these magical sigils, really, which these glyphs are, right? But what I've found, and really what's found me, you know, what the sky has taught me, is that so many of our glyphs, perhaps all of them, though I have a few codes left to crack, are very clear teachings of tropical astrology via what I like to call sacred astronomy, right? The experience of the marriage of heaven and earth with our feet on the ground. And I'll say a little bit more about that sometime here, because if this is true, and especially since they didn't come around till later on, they clearly do seem to be codified in tropical astrology, tropical zodiac thought. And that doesn't in any way mean that's the one and only zodiac. I would not apply that. In fact, we're looking at 3 zodiacs in the illustration here. I'll speak much more about that at Zion Retreat for OPA's retreat in Zion National Park next year, and in India, if any of you coming out for the IVC in February 2020. But I think how the zodiac came to us and the way that we teach the history of the zodiac might be challenged through some of the transmissions of a few of these glyphs. So I'll kind of let you decide if that's true or not. But here we go. So this is Sacred Astronomy as taught by our mysterious sign glyphs. Sunday, August 11th, 2019. All right, what's wrong with this picture? Right, this is the Leo constellation, and we see Leo there. I prefer to call this the lion. So it's July 23rd to August 22nd. Well, we're in that time right now, August 11th, and here's an image of the sky, courtesy Stellarium software with an astro gold chart inside. And we see that the sun is approaching the third decan of Leo, and yet it's held there in the claw of the crab. So what's going on? Signs and constellations are very different things. I'm fortunate that I began my study at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, where Daniel Germario led me to call this star group the lion and the sign Leo. Those dates below definitely describe the sun in the tropical sign of Leo, but not in the constellation of the lion. Signs and constellations are different things. So what is this Leo glyph? And we've heard it's the bright mane of the lion and all sorts of things. And look, this is northern hemispheric, and I try to be global, but what I will say about this is it sure seems to me with that circle of spirit that it's about the sun having reached its highest height at summer solstice and now coming back down. So the circle of spirit, the crescent of soul, and the cross of matter are the three elements which the glyphs that we use to represent the planets in our day are composed. I recently recorded a talk about that called Circle, Crescent, and Cross that you can find at the free teachings page of GeminiBrett.com. It's interesting that we don't find these circle, crescent, and crosses in many of our sign glyphs. Leo, maybe Capricorn, depending on how you go, and certainly in the Earth glyph of Taurus, right? Now, regardless of how you stylize this glyph, it really doesn't look like the bowl of the heavens. No, Taurus is the crescent of soul over the circle of spirit. In other words, it's the moon and the sun, and very specifically this youngest moon phase. This was an image I took in Tucson, Arizona during the Astronomy for Astrologers OPA training in October of 2018. We were out admiring Venus in this beautiful chakra sunset, and one of the students, Caroline, said, "Hey, is that the moon?" And it was maybe the youngest moon, this tiny sliver. Hopefully it's showing up in your screen. And this is the shape called Diana's bow, right? When Moon Goddess is firing arrows at her brother Apollo, the sun, who is set down below. It was especially interesting to see this youngest moon because the chart said it was under the horizon. And beautifully, I had just spoken about lunar latitude during class that day to show why this is possible for our charts to say below the ground and the sky to disagree. So reconnecting the sky to the chart and seeing more dimensions in the two dimensions of the wheel, for me, is an imperative thing if we really want to delineate according to nature. So again, OPA Retreat 2020, Zion National Park, April 27th through 29th, part 2. I'll be teaching 4 nights and 3 days of astronomy for astrologers. I hope you will join us. All right, well, notice that youngest moon visible. It's about 12 degrees from the sun. And it's pretty interesting that it is this phase, this youngest phase of moon that is visible, depending on where you are, when moon and sun are in their exalted degrees. This will happen in 2035, just after a very early Easter, right? So it'll be bunny time. I mean, isn't it interesting that the Aries glyph, the way that many of us draw it, actually looks more like bunny ears than the ram's horns? And this is why I think it's really important to draw with the curves. But you know, constellation called Aries, which I like to call the ram, it doesn't have two curves like this, right? Just one. So what is that thing? And often it's drawn today like the back of a ram, but it seems really maybe more related to the ram's horn, like the shofar, right? Because this is what's blown at new moon or first visible moon time to announce the beginning of a new moon. And we know these 12 zodiac signs go back to Babylonian times, right? As does the Hebrew calendar. Well, Aries is actually the newest of the 12 and didn't come around till the Hellenistic period, or so it is said. So what is this thing? And again, importantly, those dates are wrong for the sun's alignment to this constellation in our day and age. It's right for alignments to this tropical sign. Aries and the ram signs and constellations are different things. All right, Roshan Roland Kirk says, well, you can play many horns at once, so we will just kind of do that. But that's just going to bring us back to this weirdness of bunny ears, you know? Why the Easter bunny at this equinox time when the sun ingresses Aries? I mean, it seems like a strange avatar to express this, right? The sun on the cross. And yet not at all, because of course the Easter eggs and the fertile bunny are about fertility and Ostara, right? The spring equinox celebration, which is named from the Germanic, the goddess Oster, whose name means dawn, right? And look at the German word for east, and you will find very similar letters used, okay? And we see that here too, right? So Easter couldn't be more obvious. This is about the east. And so is this ram being. So what I'm going to do is in Stellarium here, help you see how the eastern sky works. And I invite you to go outside and sit on the ground at night and just sit east and watch what east does. It's the permanent fountain of youth, the rise, new beginnings, right? Can you see this shape? Can you see the Aries glyph in the sky? Now, typically we can't see east, north, and south at the same time, so I'll zoom in, and there we have those bunny ears. And go outside and you'll see that stars that rise south go south and stars that rise north go north. And every moment this bunny ear or ram's horn, especially because they curl back around to set in the west. Now, to be fair, as you can see in the latitude and longitude here, this was cast for the equator, okay, where the sky works most like this because the celestial equator passes through the zenith. All right, and the celestial poles are right on the horizon. And now we get into some kind of technical, nerdy terms, right? So let's slow down, rewind a bit, and connect to what we know. Now, there are many happenings in astrology that are rather magical systems. You know, I like to say from the sacred astronomy perspective that the true thesis of astrology is that, and simply that, astronomical cycles influence our energetic experience as earthlings, right? Now you look at planetary days and hours and solar arcs, which are impossible in nature, and other things that we use in that work, and it will challenge that thesis. But from the astronomy side of astrology, it's this: it's the poetic breath of nature. It's not some symbolic language. So when people ask me to prove astrology, I just say, well, how do you feel at 3 a.m. versus 3 p.m.? Right? This is the primary motion of Earth, Earth spinning on her axis, which I am fond of calling the sword and the stone, or the spine of Gaia, right? Because this is the axis on which our whole world turns. And the perpendicular to this, the circle of matter. So Earth spins and flowers open to receive the light and close at night to dream and rest, don't you? And well, that's a pretty interesting look, the Sagittarius glyph pointing to the celestial pole. Well, with our feet on the ground, the poles are those places of the heavens around which the stars circulate. And in the northern sky in our time, Polaris, North Star, lives there, pole star. I believe this is an ancient depiction of how the northern sky works, drawn by northern hemisphere beings long ago in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. I was interested. The night before I went and saw this with my eyes, the astronomers who did a really cool presentation, they showed this glyph and said, we don't know why they drew so many spirals. We think it has something to do about, you know, the source and the end of life. And I think that's beautiful. But literally their next slide was a time lapse like the one that I just showed of all the stars circulating the celestial pole. And it seems very obvious to me they weren't using time-lapse or star trails photography techniques, but if you just sit north if you're in the northern hemisphere, or sit south if you're in the southern hemisphere, and watch the sky for some hours times, you will see the spiral dance. And really it's concentric circles. All right, so bunny's on the North Pole. Well, that's an uncomfortable place for the bunny. We'll send him down to the equator because actually that's where the stellarium's cast for anyway, right? And there, because the North Pole is on the ground, right? See how this would be? The whole sky in the east works like this rolling wheel, all right? Well, I could go back up to the pole. And well, I think probably the penguin's a better avatar for that realm up there, right? And as the world spins, if you're at the North Pole, where now North Star is directly above your head at the zenith, and that means the celestial equator, which is Earth's equator projected out into space, is on your horizon. Well, then as the world spins, we get this kind of big top spinning the sky's daily or primary motion. I mean, this is like the flat earther's dream, right? Unfortunately for them, it only works in that one place and is completely defied by the truth that this happens in the southern hemisphere as well. I think we should go down there. But I'll just point your attention here to the tail of the little bear, or little dipper as we often call, which is the star Polaris, pole star, North Star. And those names are quite new because precession of the equinox, axial precession, will shift the place where our spine of Gaia, our sword of the stone, points in space over time. That's one of the key ingredients of the talk that I will give for OPA at the Zion retreat next year, and certainly something that we will get deep into in the Astronomy for Astrologers training. All right, teddy bear, globetrotter this time. And so we start here at North Pole, right? The Earth spins west to east, so we notice the heavens moving east to west. Quickly to the equator we go, where now the celestial equator is going through the zenith, and the poles are on the ground. And now we'll head down to the southern hemisphere, south celestial pole, at the top of the sky, and we get the big top thing. It's just spinning in the opposite direction. So if any of you have been challenged by the strange flat earth people who seem to be plaguing YouTube these days, just let them know that a world that has two celestial poles demands an earth that has two terrestrial poles. In other words, she's spherical. Anyway, so now from the South Pole space, and we'll come back up to the equator. And we're just gonna travel around a little bit. So this is where the Aries glyph shows that ram's horn of the stars hooking back around, rising in the east and coming through the north and south gates to set in the west, yeah? I'm going down now to 30 degrees north latitude. This is right around Alexandria, Egypt, where so much of our craft was formulated. And I've got it, as the celestial equator leans 30 degrees towards the south, I got to lean my Aries glyph there too. You can see the North Celestial Pole on the left is at 30 degrees altitude off the ground. And I want you to go back and watch these things in this video and pause and just contemplate how the altitude to the North Celestial Pole or South Celestial Pole has to equal your latitude on the Earth. The teddy bear will teach you a thing. But importantly, as I move there from 45, which was Romania and Minneapolis, and now I'm down to, or up to 60 degrees north latitude, you know, notice how I have to adjust this Aries glyph to keep the motion of the eastern sky, right? And a lot of it gets lost underground. In fact, when I get down here, or way up here to the North Pole, only half of that Aries motion is visible. I mean, it kind of looks like that thing again, but I don't think those cats were blowing shofars at the North Pole, right? This really brings me to some of the sacred astronomy that I find in the Aries glyph, right? Where we see these images of as above, so below. The Aries glyph is one of the few that actually looks like the constellation it is traditionally associated with. I mean, the Aries glyph doesn't look like all of the water bearer, but you can see that wavy thing, I guess, in the water stream and the lucky stars, as they are called. But only one side of this binary glyph, right? So this really speaks to Hermes Trismegistus and as above, so below. Interesting, right? An air sign, Aquarius, associated with the water bearer. So it reminds me to drink another cup of tea, where I first inhale a little air that sits on top of that water. So as above, so below. And let's talk about hidden things. But first, a little bit of cosmology. This is a heliocentric image for the start time today, August 11th, 2019, 10 a.m. I'm sitting in San Anselmo, California, right? And it's really beautiful. This is Solar System Scope, which you can play with online for free, solarsystemscope.com, or download for super cheap. It's cool to connect to the heliocentric or sun-centered image of the solar system for a moment. Check out your birth moment. This, by the way, is the older version of Solar System Scope because they took away the opportunity to go geocentric, which of course is going to look a lot more like the chart of this moment, right? So we're here on Earth, and on Earth, right, the planets are surrounding us. What's in the middle of our chart wheel? But the middle of Earth, the heart of Gaia, as above, so below. Fascinatingly, we measure astrology not from the surface of the Earth where we live and eat and breathe and can witness the heavenly happenings, but rather from the center of Earth. That's kind of a trip, isn't it? And, you know, I like to say this and bring us into this exercise. If everybody would just reach your hands to the top of the sky right now, to the zenith, right? We're all in different places. I mean, many of us are in different times, and we're certainly pointing to a different star. And in fact, I'm pointing to a different star right now than I was when I raised my hand, because the above moves really quickly. Why? Because the below does, right? Why does the eastern sky rise? Because Earth falls in that direction, just as we descend into matter and embody so we can lift spirit up, you see. So if we reach to the top of the sky, we're reaching to something incredibly unique in location and moment above, you know. But now reach down through your spine and meet me in the center of the Earth, where we are all connected in every moment from all spaces, yeah. And it's a beautiful thing that we measure astrology from there. This really kind of tripped me out when I first came across it. I remember leading a lunar eclipse ceremony in Arizona, and I was having a really hard time understanding why what I saw in my astrology chart, right, about the moment of the eclipse disagreed with what the astronomers were telling me, and they were right. And that's when I learned that we cast our charts geocentric, center of Earth, not topocentric, surface of Earth. And I had a hard time with that for a while until I realized that beautiful thing that, of course, yes, in the heart of Gaia, in the center of Earth, that's where we are all one. That's where we are all connected. And see, that opens this whole other cosmology. that agrees with the first rubric of Hermes' Emerald Tablet, right? What does Hermes tell us? "'Tis true without lying, certain and most true. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing." And I love this, that we measure the above, the heavenly happenings, from the below. The idea is, it's as if, well, in my cosmology, the way that I express it, it's as if every planet is a unique instrument. They have their own specific timbre and tone. They play the note of the sign in which they reside, 12 signs, 12 half steps in the musical octave, and they play this jam of the moment now, right? And it's reverberating in the heart of Earth. So if we find ourselves in the center of a musical circle, and all of Earth is there, the heart of Earth, the center of Earth, is experiencing this one chord. But in this illustration, the way it's shown right now, I mean, we've got the Americas facing the flutes, and I guess Asia facing the strings. So isn't that a different experience, right? I mean, I like to say, just because you don't see it doesn't mean you don't be it. We might not see an eclipse, but we're certainly going to feel its effect if we're tuned in. But that happening of the whole, which we see reflected in the chart by what? The signs of the zodiac, right? We can relocate this moment now to everywhere in the world, and we're going to get the same geometry, the same aspects, because the planets will be in the exact same degrees of the same signs, right? What changes is the houses in which they are in, right? So the signs, which for me actually, and this is a story for another time, don't come to Earth from the heavens. I mean, signs and constellations are different things, but rather emanate from the heart of Earth along the plane out towards infinity, where we reach those 12 star groups that do host the sun's annual travel, and for the most part, the planets dance too. So for me, the below is a place of signs, where the above is particular. I mean, here we see in the above, some get the flutes and some get the strings, right? And so while the whole thing's happening, all this above, all these heavenly happenings, with all of it in agreement, is resonating in the heart of Earth, and then she'll send it out to all of us from there, so we can experience things that we can't see, right? The planets are speaking to Earth, and then she with us, our mother with us. But still, it's a different experience, you know, if the frog's facing the saxophone or the keyboards, right? So below, signs; above, houses, right? We can relocate this moment time all over the globe, and we'll find the signs in the planets in the same degrees of the same signs, but in different houses. I mean, different, just like the cuisine is different and the language is different in India or France than they are from where I'm sitting in California. The planets and the houses are different in moments of time, right? So as above, so below, and yet there's also distinction between the above and below. And that's what I can offer in what I see in the Aquarius glyph as far as the sacred astronomy is concerned, because, well, I haven't quite cracked that code yet. So this is the moment that I began here in San Anselmo, California, with the medicine wheel aligned, an equinox degree on the rise, which means the ascendant was almost due east, and that only happens twice a day, right? Venus, Cazimi, depending on how you count this, right? In the 11th. So what a wonderful time to be speaking about astrological art with our community. But in the same moment in time in Hawaii, right? This is Hilo. And I've kind of been spending a good amount of time there because we are Mauna Kea. I hope you are looking into this movement. People ask me often which side I'm on, right? Because I am very interested in the sacred study and the ancient study. And I also very much enjoy the information that's coming down to us through giant telescopes. But I'm certainly not about putting giant telescopes on sacred mountains, especially when there's places they can go, right, that are not being objected to by an indigenous people. A wisdom tradition. I mean, look, the mountain is the telescope. So anyway, I hope you'll maybe just join me in the heart right now in prayer. I hope you'll go look into this movement, We Are Mauna Kea, and those who are protecting this, the most sacred mountain and the tallest mountain of earth from foot to top, okay? From these gigantic technological things, just because we want to look so far out and narrow our view, right? I'm excited about new telescopes, but put them somewhere where it's okay and where it's safe, and don't tune out, right, to the native indigenous traditions. And we should say that all over the place, because what is true honorable leadership? And so here at the start time in Hawaii, Virgo on the rise, and let us remember that royalty is first in service to the land and then the people. So I like Mercury in the last minutes of Cancer here in the 11th for the Hawaii chart, and at maximum morning elongation today. Yesterday was the peak. But, you know, we're going to read this chart very differently than the one we saw before, because houses are a thing, right? Again, signs, whole, center, houses, particular, surface, below and above. And one of the things we're going to say here as well, it seems like there's a lot of hidden things, right? Why is the 12th house hidden things? There's lots of good reasons to describe this. I mean, for one, in the moments before your birth, where were you? You were in a pretty hidden place. But very importantly, from the poetic breath of nature standpoint, trees, right? I mean, when do you ever get a perfect view of the eastern horizon? Trees, mountains. I mean, even if you're looking on the ocean due east, there tends to be waves and tides and such, right? So this is one of the very strong reasons why the East is hidden things, and something I want to get after, because as above, so below. Can we see into the center? Can we see below ground? Well, the software lets us. So, well, Aries describes the moment East. When I take the ground away, what do you see there? Just let those stars, oh, there it is. Draw for you the Pisces glyph. One of only two glyphs with the horizontal line, which represents the horizon. Now, there's a lot of important sacred geometry teachings of Pisces, which is an open glyph of the mysteries, and that's a tale for another time. But very clearly, this describes the motion of the eastern sky. This, to me, is no coincidence. And so why would Pisces and Aries work east? Easter, right? That equinox. Same reason that Libra works the west. Now, the Libra glyph, a lot of bling here, right? But doesn't describe the motion of the western sky, but it's that bling, brightness, glittering, you know, the Libra glyph is the ultimate image of westing, and we call it sunset, right? Why does Libra align due west? Pisces, Aries, cusp due east. All right, because here as we see the Sagittarius glyph, clearly I'm trying to show you that that glyph itself is pointing to the celestial pole, right? With the cross of the glyph describing the celestial equator, right? Well, we don't draw it straight up, do we? No, because of course, the Earth's primary motion, our daily motion, is tilted in respect to the secondary motion, our orbital or yearly motion, right, by an angle of about 23.5 degrees. Now, really, I'll probably put the Sag glyph over there earlier, but I wanted it to point to the direction north. And this is a very important thing. Earth's northern axis is always in every moment's time pointing north. Right? So if my fist is the sun and you see the globe here, this would be June solstice time, because the northern axis is leaning towards the light. The reason for the seasons is it doesn't always face the sun, right? It's always facing north, right? So at December solstice time, it's the southern axis that's leaning towards the sun and the northern axis leaning away. And this is all the proof we really need to defend at least sun sign astrology or sun degree or sun moment astrology using very real modern science, accepted gravitational concepts, right? Because here at March equinox, dig that this is the only moment of the year, right? Earth orbiting the sun. This is the only moment of the year when the sun is pulling the earth from the eastern direction. Can you see that? We'll watch the earth go around just to say that this is this moment where we move, and Easter is closely aligned to this equinox, east, right? I think it really should be the equinox time, which Ostara is, right? We move from tropical Pisces to tropical Aries, these two glyphs that describe the eastern sky's motion, and this is the only moment in time when the sun is due east, not of California or India or France, right? That's changing, that's particular, that's surface. This is the only moment in the year when the sun is due east of the whole, of the below, of the center of the earth, of the heart of Gaia, where we are all connected and where, for good reasons, we measure astrology from, right? So this is 0 Aries, tropical. That is like the ascendant for the whole globe. And that's why the natural zodiac with 0 Aries, a whole sign on the left cusp, is a thing. And that's also why precession of the equinoxes and many of the prophecies of the turning of the ages, of which I will be speaking at the Zion retreat next year, has astrological merit. All right, so this is when Pisces becomes Aries. And then as Earth travels around the sun, we see the sun moving in front, not of the constellations, but in front of the signs of Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, which are northern signs. They are north signs that go north, just as Cancer, Leo, and Virgo are north signs that come east. I want to rewind and just show that at June solstice time, this is when, yes, the northern axis of Earth, the spine of Gaia, is leaning towards the sun, and the only moment in time when the sun is pulling the Earth from the north. Can you see that? Right? And then the sun will pull the Earth from the northwest during Cancer, Leo, and Virgo until here we are at the cusp of Virgo and Libra, the only moment when the sun is pulling the Earth due west. Libra is the image of sunset, right? And then, of course, we'll move into the southern signs, and the sun will pull the Earth from the southwest for Leo, Scorpio, and Sag. Oh, there's that Sag glyph. I hope you can see that in every image of Earth shown here at the seasonal stations. And then we move into Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, which pull the Earth from, respectively, from the south at December solstice and then towards the southeast until we return again to the cusp of Pisces and Aries, which describes the eastern sky. All right, so dig that motion. And again, this is cast for the equator. This is going to tilt if you move north and south. But what I want to show you here is a different great circle. This is the ecliptic plane, right? And notice that unlike the celestial equator, it doesn't rise due east in every moment. This is a thing that we learn about the ascendant, but only 0 Aries tropical and 0 Libra tropical rise due east. 0 Capricorn rises furthest south of east, 0 Cancer furthest north of east. At the equator, those solstice extremes will be 23.5 degrees north or south of due east, right? That increases with distance from the equator. But why is that? This is a really cool thing. One of the ancient words for the ascendant, Greek word, is oiox, which means rudder. Let's watch that again. And just watch how this is held by this Pisces glyph. And you see the ascendant, which is where the ecliptic intersects the eastern horizon, ruddering back and forth against the cardinal direction of due east. This is happening at the west of the descendant as well. If the if a northern sign like Gemini is rising, then a southern sign, Sag, is setting, right? So there's that oiax. We each have a very specific direction of our ascendant. It points somewhere on the globe, right? That's a thing that I love to turn people on to. Why is this happening? Well, we've looked already here, right? The plane of Earth's primary motion, the circle of matter. What is the primary motion? The spin, right? So why do I call it circle of matter? I mean, though Earth's spin is bringing us such hits as sunrise and sunset, it's all about the Earth, matter, right? The more accepted term, celestial equator, because as you can see, this is Earth's equator perpendicular to the north-south axis, spine of Gaia, sword of our stone. Earth's equator projected out towards space, right, is the plane of our spin. But it's not the plane of the yearly motion or the orbital motion, of course, because Earth's spin plane is tilted in respect to the orbital plane by an angle of about 23.5 degrees. It's actually more like 23.4 from the vertical, which would be 66.6 from the horizontal. Moving on, the ecliptic plane is the place where we see the sun. Because it is the plane of Earth's orbit of the sun, from Earth's point of view, it's the plane of sun's orbit about the Earth, which of course is the travel through the constellations and the signs of the zodiac. The ecliptic plane I like to call the circle of spirit, because this is where the sun lives. So there's that 23.5 degree separation, right? If you know the image of lunar nodes and bendings, these would be like the bendings, not for the lunar nodes, which is the moon-sun relationship, but for the earth-sun relationship, matter and spirit. And those, of course, are the tropical 0 Cancer and 0 Capricorn degrees, whereas the nodes would be the equinox points. So what we see here with the sun is just that time where the sun is moving from southern to northern declination, crossing the celestial equator as it does twice a year, and as it moves from south to north, and you can see that motion the way the Earth is positioned here, right? That is 0 Aries, tropical. That is March equinox. That is Pisces Aries. That's the only moment in time when the sun is pulling the center of Earth from the east. Easter, see? And somehow we take these 4 stations, which are incredibly very real astronomical devices and directional devices. I recently posted a 3.5-hour movie on YouTube. You can go see it there. You can see it at GeminiBrett.com. That's called The Very Real Astronomy of the Tropical Zodiac. I think we often feel this attack, which I will also be addressing at Zion, from the scientist crew, that astrology has to be wrong because our signs are off. The signs and the constellations disagree. Well, this is true. And sadly, when people are using that as a vehicle to prove astrology fake, they are not seeing the very real and frankly simple astronomy of the tropical zodiac. So I invite you to go watch that movie if you want to see. But very importantly, the tropical zodiac, which we often teach is seasonal, well, it works for the whole globe, and we don't have to flip the archetypes for the southern hemisphere. And so why is this? And there are very good reasons, and you can see it in that video, The Very Real Astronomy of the Tropical Zodiac. It's not seasonal, it's directional. The seasons are a result of the cardinal directions: 0 Cancer, north; 0 Libra, west; 0 Capricorn, south; 0 Aries, east. The cardinal directions, the cardinal signs, you see? And like so many ancient shamanic systems, of which certainly tropical astrology is, they are systems of the energetic qualities of the cardinal directions. Now, how do we get from 4 stations to 12 signs? That's an interesting thing. What is the astronomy of that? And we're often told that it's because there's 12 moons a year, right? Well, some say there's 13. Really, there's 12.369, depending on how you're counting. Here's an ancient system of counting called the Babylonian calendar. And here's a very recent article written last year for OPA, which you can find at OPA Astrology.org, right? Astronomy for Astrologers. I write calendar calisthenics. The ancient Babylonian calendar consisted of 12 months alternating between 29 and 30 days to keep the 29.5-day synodic cycle or lunation. Okay, so first of all, it's 29.53059 days on average, so that doesn't work perfectly, but it keeps it pretty close. You just have to add in some intercalary or leap months here and there. So we continue reading 12 such months of 29.5 days, add to 354 days, a period known as the lunar year. To maintain an alignment with the seasons, which is imperative for a calendar to function agriculturally, an intercalary or leap month must be added about every third year. The synodic month of 29.53 days and the solar year of 365.242 days synchronize almost exactly every 19 years, resulting in a near perfect lunisolar period that includes 12 years of 12 months and 7 years of 13 months, where the months alternate between 29 and 30 days. You have to do a few other things of calendar kung fu to keep pace with both the Earth Sun, that's the year, and the Sun Moon, lunations, right? It's a very tricky thing to do. And for me, it's like a primary principle initiation that all astrologers should move through. We get here, it sounds like a bunch of number geek stuff, but very importantly, there's 12.369 moon cycles a year. There's 13.37 moons a year if you're counting just moon lapping the zodiac, right? Neither of these are 12. Is this really where our 12-sign zodiac came from? I'm not saying it's not. I'm just challenging that a bit, and I hope we all will contemplate these things. The sister sciences of astronomy, which are sacred harmony and sacred geometry, have a better expression, I think, of 12-ness. If you've drawn with a compass, you've probably found your way to the seed of life, which is 7 circles around 1. Here also showing what I call the octave circle, and that creates the Taji, the yin-yang. Those would be better descriptions of the 6 houses above the horizon and 6 below, right? Diurnal and nocturnal, depending on where the sun is. But here we see 6-petaled flower of gold and a 6-petaled flower of silver, implying, by the way, solar or outward and lunar or inward. When we use 7 circles of the same radius, 6 woven around 1, the so-called seed of life pattern, we create these 2 6-petaled flowers that are phased by 30 degrees. Those are the diurnal and the nocturnal signs. We can also see that in music, or hear that in music, okay? The 6 whole tone scales. Anyway, creation creates in 12. And the more we play with number, okay, in the mystery traditions, we learn that sacred geometry is number in space, and musical harmony is number in time, that astronomy is number in space and time. So if we really want to get after astrology, right, which is the art that bridges the astronomy and correspondences, these are good practices. This is why the mystery school always had us drawing with the compass and vibrating the strings. All right. So let's watch this dance of sun moving through the 12 signs of the zodiac. And I'll direct your attention to the lower right here, where Astro Gold contributed part to this animation, and so much of it also through the genius illustration of my beloved Anna Zaharia. Together we are arts of the chart, and we are creating things like this. And so Anna creates these illustrations and gives them to me piece by piece so I can animate in such ways. And here's one. And we'll watch the sun from the 0 Aries moment, where the declination, okay, which is a north or south measurement from the celestial equator, is 0. Because at either equinox, like the nodes of the Earth-Sun situation, right? The nodes, the intersections of the planes of day, Earth, and year, sun, see? That means the declination is 0 because the sun's on the celestial equator. And just as I was describing directionally, like, north, east signs and northwest signs. Okay, here we're going to see that the northeast signs, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, and I'm speaking tropical, are northern declination signs where the sun is increasing in northern declination on the way up to the extreme north position, which is June solstice, right? And of course, that means for the northern hemisphere, longest day, and for the southern hemisphere, longest night. All right, so let's watch this go down. And if you choose, you could watch this and repeat and slow it down and see, for example, how 2 different degrees of the zodiac will have the same declination. We call that intishan, right? Here's the sun crossing down into the southern realms, all right? And here peaking at the southern extreme, December solstice, right? So 12 signs because creation creates in 12s, and clearly 4 quadrants: north getting norther, north coming back to the south, coming back to the plane, to the southern node, which is the Libra equinox point, and then south going south, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and southern declination, but coming back to the north, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, right? The tropical zodiac is a directional phenomenon. I can show that to you in many ways. So these are a few effects, I guess, of the truth that these planes of day, spin, and year orbit are tilted to one another, right? So we're going to watch these. There's a lot to look at. We're going to go one at a time. All right. So first, the lower left, this is just the sun climbing, right, for half the year and descending for half the year. And you're hip to this. Now, of course, as the sun in the northern hemisphere, now we're in Leo, is on the way down. That means in the southern hemisphere, it's on the way up. And we'll see another image that can kind of show that why. But here's the most northern sign, 0 Capricorn tropical, right? And then the sun's going to come back down. Let's watch this a little faster. And well, one goes up and one goes down. Well, that sure sounds a lot like this glyph to me, friends. Now, if I was able to cast this in stellarium for the sun at the midheaven every day, instead of the same clock time every day, as you can see, it would go straight up and straight down. I'm going to show this to you again, right? So, because in the northern hemisphere, like Athens, Greece, the midheavens always due south. I'm just going to do that. But here it's the same time every day. And do you see the figure 8, the limnoscape, the analemna, right? Well, it's my feeling, and this is the most recent code I've cracked, that is why we draw the Virgo glyph like this. To tell you the truth, I haven't figured out the M. And that seems to be a language thing, not necessarily my forte. In the English language, M's the middle letter of the alphabet at number 13, an interesting number. We can get into royal arches of masonry and other interesting mystery things, but I can't go there right now. What I can say is that that vesica that we often use to show Virgo, of course, opposite to the sign Pisces that shows the fishes tied together, or so it is said, that to me, that seems like that limnoscape, right, of the analemna. So on the figure 8 on the left, that's if you take a photograph of the sun, clearly not every day, or there'd be 365.24219 of them, but rather maybe that's every week or something. And that place where they cross is the equinox degrees. So on the way down, it's Virgo becoming Libra tropical, and on the way up, it's Pisces becoming Aries, right? So let's just watch that one more time here. Bound within, oops, I don't know why, bound within this Gemini glyph, really, where I'd love to just show this up and down, but it would take me like 3 days of animation. I don't have that right now. But we see this analemna, this figure 8, in different latitudes of Earth. It's going to have a different pitch. It'll do different things. Check it out. It's an amazing study. And I feel that's what we see in this Virgo glyph. So here's another image of the Gemini glyph. These are the dual obelisks at St. Peter's Square. And oh, wait a second. There's only one of them. Borrowed from Egypt, I guess. This to me is this is my like favorite astronomical and astrological calendar. First of all, it's a sundial, okay, because St. Peter's Square, that avenue is due east. By the way, the solstice suns rise on the extremes of the temple or the pillars here and here. Right, so the northernmost sunrise on the eastern horizon, June solstice, and the southernmost December solstice. We'll get back to that. But very importantly, this works like a sundial, right? sun moving from the east to the west, so the shadow is going to move from the west to the east. This is sometime around, I don't know, sun's in the 11th house here, maybe in the 10th. So we'll move on and see another time of day. It's almost midday here. How can I tell? Because in the northern hemisphere, like Rome, the sun always culminates due south, midday, halfway between sunrise and sunset, and therefore the shadow would point due north, right? Here's later in the day, right? Sun's in the 8th house, maybe even the 7th house before sunset, depending on the season that you're in. But this is midday, right? You see that shadow pointing due north. And it's also a very short shadow. Well, of course, the midheaven sun, the midday sun, is the highest sun of the day. And this shadow that short probably means it's also the highest sun of the year. In fact, that's probably what the bounds of that circle teach you. But certainly if you get your feet on the ground at the Vatican, here in St. Peter's Square, you get to see something even more interesting. Now, this obelisk was moved from Heliopolis by Caesar to Alexandria, and from there by Caligula to Rome, and later repositioned in Rome by Emperor Sixtus V, shortly after the Gregorian reform, and it's very clearly an astrological calendar. Why can I say that? So you see here below my feet in this picture is a meridian line. It's a north-south line, right, in the bricks. And so this means that we're just past midday. How can I tell? Well, the sun is just a little bit towards the west, towards the rest of the midheaven due south, the reach, okay? So we'll turn around now and check out the plaque. Solsticio in Cancer, 22nd of June. Okay, well, solstice. But you know, that shadow, which is clearly after solstice because it's longer, or maybe before solstice because it's longer. Here's the truth of the Gemini 2. You only need one stick in the ground to see the shadow, which is going to get longer for 6 months and then get shorter for 6 months. The shortest shadow of the year will be June solstice in the northern hemisphere or December solstice in the southern hemisphere, right? And then the shadow is going to get longer. So, I mean, I'm just interjecting these Gemini and Cancer glyphs into a Catholic thing that's probably blasphemous, right? No, it wasn't me. Here's some other plaques in that St. Peter's Square, and we see cool things like western wind and whatnot, but how about on the left? Let's zoom in a little. February 19th, Pisces. October 23rd, Scorpio, right? And we're seeing actually not signs that are known to be Antisha, but I will say 1 degrees Pisces is Antisha, 29 degrees Libra, 5 degrees Scorpio, Antisha, 25 degrees Aquarius. Northern signs are going to go in one direction with the shadow and the other one's back. And the Antisha pairs, this is also a journey for another time. They're very beautiful things. Antisha, well, Sha is Greek for shadow, right? So this is how we notice this. This is keeping what's called the meridian calendar. The Pope loves astrology, I guess, and obelisks, apparently. Anyway, so Gemini, right? Sun goes up for 6 months and comes down for 6 months. Now we're going to zoom into another image here, and hopefully one that we're all familiar with. If you watch the sunrise on the eastern horizon or set on the western horizon, it moves north for 6 months between December solstice and June solstice, where it then stops and turns around and goes back to the south. And a beautiful thing about this is it's not dependent on hemisphere, right? The most northern sunrise and the most northern sunset is June solstice, is 0 degrees Cancer. And then the sun moves 6 months to the south, then stops and turns around, solstice. At the tropicos, that's Greek for turnaround, and comes back, you see? Well, what glyph looks like that? But Cancer, right? So this is the sun moving 6 months in one direction and 6 months back in the other direction, right? I mean, does our Cancer glyph look anything like this crab constellation, which, by the way, is very dim in the sky? And this little K. Now the lion actually looks like a lion, but doesn't look like the Leo glyph. If anything, the Leo glyph would be the head of the line, but turned around. Interesting, because you look at the scorpion of the sky, and the Scorpio glyph with the arrow is also turned around. It could be some weird as above, so below, like mirror mapping, like watching the heavens and the waters, but I don't know. The Gemini constellation here on the left, let me just bring the boys in, Castor and Polydeuces, right? That looks like the two vertical pillars. But, you know, I challenge you to go find the Cancer constellation in the sky, and you're going to see a couple, maybe 3 stars max if you get into a dark place. And it's hard to say why they would say that's a crab, right? And what we're told in astrology is that the zodiac was a sidereal situation, right? It was watching the sun and actually probably the moon. I mean, look, the Babylonian calendar was a lunisolar calendar. It was about tracking months by the birth of the moon, Diana's bow, that crescent on top of the circle, the Taurus glyph that I showed before, and then moving through the lunar mansions, of course, called nakshatras by our friends in India, right? But that the lunar year of 354 days does not equal the solar year of 365 days. Does some really weird things that I'm not going to lose us with right now. So regardless, why a crab? Because these stars look like a crab? Or is it because the crab, like the sun at solstice time, moves sideways? Or moves sideways between solstice or tropicos points, and lives at a place where the earth moves sideways back and forth too. So just understand, as I'm looking at how Aries and Pisces actually describe Pisces, we have to take the ground away and see below the hidden things, kind of 12th housey, isn't it? Even though it's in the first. But that Aries and Pisces describe the motion of that eastern sky. And I hope I've shown some other ones that land and make some sense for you. That the crab, I believe, was chosen because of it represents this north and south movement on the horizons between the tropicos, between the solstice points, right? And so if this is true, then really we were choosing star groups that represented animals that speak to the nature of this seasonal or tropical happenings. I present that to you. I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but it kind of seems true to me. All right, last thing we're going to look at in this thing here, okay? So here you see the sun on the very far right, right? And at equinox time, and here we're looking at Libra equinox, sun due west of the center of Earth, the sun will zenith right above the equator skies at midday. Why? Because the celestial equator goes through the zenith on the equator at Earth, right? But it only does in this day. And we were looking at this terminator, that's the shadow line before vertical. But as I go through the seasons, right? Because the plane of spin and the plane of year are not the same, we're gonna like tilt over. And check it out, when the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, though it's in the constellation of the Archer, well, that was weird. Sorry, animation error. When the sun ingresses tropical Capricorn, it zeniths for earthly locations on the Tropic of Capricorn. When it ingresses tropical Cancer, it zeniths in locations on the Tropic of Cancer. So the sun every year is moving north and south between the tropicos, the tropics, right? Which were derived from that Greek word tropic for turnaround, just as the tropical zodiac was. So as astronomers are telling me that I should be calling, somebody born in January 2nd, or let's say December 22nd, Sagittarius, because that's where the sun is constellationally at that time. Well, why aren't they telling me I should call this band at 23.5 degrees south latitude on Earth the Tropic of Sagittarius? Or the other one, the Tropic of Gemini, right? Because the astronomy of the tropical zodiac is very real. It's like very simple and beautiful relationship of Earth and sun. And as we deepen our connection to the astronomy, the measurable, the quantifiable heavenly happenings, it is my feeling through that understanding of the poetic breath of nature, our astrological delineation, the way that through our craft, through our art, we are utilizing that quantifiable to assist with the non-quantifiable, the qualities, the correspondences, the heart. I believe if we deepen our experience and our gnosis of that which can be measured, we will have a much more intimate expression and way with that which cannot be measured. Okay, so one more glyph here to show you. This is why I've started using what's said to be the older Capricorn glyph, but I don't know, which I like to call the 76. But it's another one where we see that circle of spirit, okay? We see it in the Taurus glyph, we see it in the Leo glyph, and we already played with those two. But this to me is the trip. So the sun is over the Tropic of Capricorn. When it ingresses Capricorn, makes sense, and then it will start moving up towards the equator for equinox time. And I believe that the Capricorn glyph is describing that from the southern extreme to the middle extreme, the movement of the sun, the circle of spirit. So you might notice that this is the only one that I didn't really have a transmission for. I said a little thing before. But they say Scorpio likes to remain in the mysteries, and I guess this would be true of a Scorpio who calls himself Gemini Brett. Anyway, if you dig this stuff, go check out the 6 hours of free sacred astronomy training that are on my website, GeminiBrett.com. Go to courses, put your email in there, and I will send you links so you can play with these really fun classes. They're a little goofier, by the way, than the way that I teach this astronomy for astrologers at OPA. Not too much, though, but dig it because it gives you a lot of experiential practices to go out to the sky and to receive the information direct from what I believe to be source. That I believe astrology is so much more than some poetic or some symbolic language alone. I believe astrology to be the poetic breath of nature. So thank you so much for spending some time here with me. Carol, I got a few more slides before you come on. I know we're at time, but it's really a treat to present to OPA. It's really such an honor to be seen for my devotion in our world. And I'll tell you, go over to GeminiBrett.com to click the events page. It's not there yet, but soon we'll have astrology retreat for OPA in Zion National Park there. And as I've said many times now, we'll be teaching 4 nights and 3 days of sacred astronomy for astrologers, part of the OPA certification curriculum. And join my mailing list and you will find out about going for a retreat in Mexico where we will see Uranus in space with our face. You can see the glyph there. This is Taurinus. You can literally see Uranus in the sky with your naked eye. And we're going to have a retreat to pyramids and with music of astrology and geometry of astrology and art therapy and so much more. So I'd love to send you some words about that. So if you go to GeminiBrett.com, right on the home page, scroll down a bit, you'll find these limited $33 mini readings, sun, moon, and earth readings, and then also a place to put your name in to subscribe to the letter, which I send too rarely, right? But soon I'll send out a message about that retreat. And I hope you've enjoyed the messages sent today by Sky through me. Thank you so much, OPA, and everyone who has attended.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic presentation. And thank you so much for all your offerings as well, with the free classes and everything else that you offer for education. We so appreciate that. I do have 1 or 2 questions if you have time for that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. Jez is asking, the legend of Gemini featured one twin who didn't survive, and could it be that the obelisks are dedicated to the memory of one of them? Lot's wife, illusions also.
Yeah, the pillars, interesting. I love that, Jez. First of all, anytime we hear dedicated to the memory of love, we're onto something. I mean, importantly, in the story of Castor and Polydeuces, one was immortal and one was not, right? So Castor, in one of their many adventures, was struck dead by a jealous farmer. And his brother instantly struck that farmer down to avenge the loss of his brother, but it was not nearly enough to appease the whole of his heart where his brother always lived. And so he begged his father, who was Zeus, to take his immortality from him so he could join his brother wherever he was. And Zeus made him agree to a deal that if he wanted to see Castor again, Pollux would have to basically switch places with him in the underworld every year. So Castor would be in Hades and Polydeuces would be in Olympus, and then they would get to see each other one day every year as they exchange places. Okay, so now astronomically, astrologically, I would say this is actually a discussion of Antisha, but very importantly, as it is with all of the zodiacal constellations, every day they rise and they set. So this great story of the twins reminds us to, if we really want to find out more from beyond the veil, we have to look not only into the heavenly happenings, but also into those magnetic and powerful evolutionary realities of the underworld below.
Thank you. And then Linnea says, what an outstanding presentation, Brett. Kudos to Anna for her graphics and PowerPoint virtuosity, bringing your wonderful ideas to life. Fabulous. And I will have to say, you have one of the best PowerPoint presentations ever. The graphics are always fantastic and really support us in our knowledge. Vera writes, most of this was way over my head. I appreciate your expansive knowledge. Thank you. And Vera, just remember that Brett does offer those free classes on his website. Go to GeminiBrett.com. And then also you will be getting the recording link for this, so you can review this over and over. And the repetition of it will help you pick up new knowledge.
Totally agree, Carol. Yeah, the classes on the site are at a much slower pace, and they give you homework because it's like a 15-minute thing, and go do some homework and then come back. And the way that it's taught in the OPA curriculum is also it's not a sandblast of information. It's slower. We do a lot of embodiment experiences. We're moving around. And I would encourage you, if you want, to watch the video and mute me and just watch the images and slow them down. And Lene, thank you. I will pass that message on to Anna. It's Leo, so I'm gonna have to take some credit where credit's due. All the PowerPoint, or in this case, keynote virtuosity, that's me, sister. This is my hours of sleepless nights. And Anna does an amazing job helping me bring these visions out of behind the veil from the 12th place. But it's me doing about, I don't know, hundreds of hours getting them to move around and such. So it's a really brilliant thing to have a partner who is also a teammate in this mystery path that we are both on.
Well, it's well appreciated by all of us. Sue Minahan writes, gets better and clearer all the time. Fabulous. Great material to re-listen. Totally grateful for this fantastic opportunity. Going to get this understood for my OPA training. Oh, yay. So Sue, I believe, is taking your course at the Zion Retreat. So that's fantastic. And then let's see. Oh, Vera writes, thanks. I will be going to the OPA retreat in April and am contemplating doing this.
Yay.
Doing his course. Okay. Lots to learn beforehand. Great, Vera. Well, Gemini is very patient also, so you couldn't ask for a better teacher.
Yeah, and you're welcome to reach out to me. There's a contact at GeminiBrett.com if there's anything I can help with. Sue, thank you so much for that reflection. You've seen iterations of this stuff as it's been coming in the last few years, and it's growing, and there's a lot more growth that needs to happen. There's a few of these mysteries I want to sort out, but I just want to wrap up again by saying, look, if you agree with me that it seems these glyphs are describing actual heavenly happenings that we experience as earthlings, right? I invite you to take that contemplation back to the roots of our craft and see what these cats were after when they decided that this should be a bull, or that this should be a lion, or this should be a crab, or this should be the horns of a ram, etc. And I hope you will definitely consider joining us for Astronomy for Astrologers. It's a it's a pace that I think you will agree much more with. And for folks who are there at part 1 in Zion, I'll be teaching there. I'll be studying there. I'm very excited about that. And we'll do some night sky stuff too that I don't know if it'll be on the schedule or not, but I cannot not bring people out under to drink stars with me when we are in such a beautiful location such as that. So it'll be my treat to be there. It's always a great honor to be able to share this information and to reflect back to you. My prayer before I begin these things, which is not just the transmission, but the creation, is may the wisdom of this beautiful being speak through me today. And I hope you've all heard yourself reflected in my weird words. And as the bracelet comes off so I can be a human again, I like to say, may this have confirmed what you have always known. May it have opened new windows of contemplation, practice, and play. And in true Gemini fashion, may it have brought more questions than answers. So from my heart to yours, wherever you are in space and time, thank you for drinking Astrolo tea with me today.
Thank you. So many wonderful comments, Gemini. Alexandra writes, wonderful. Darlene, you're one of a kind. Thank you. Jennifer, amazing teachings as always. So you are truly loved, and we thank you for all the work that you're doing with OPA and for the world of astrology. Faye writes, I love the Cancer glyph interpretations and its connection to the motion. And then she writes, I'm not sure if I can read the rest of that. I'm not sure if I understand that. But thank you, Faye, for your comment. And I think with that, we've taken up much of your time. And it was well spent. You've taught us so much. And I look forward to connecting again. Thank you, everyone. And be sure to keep an eye out for the recording link. I'll be sending that shortly. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
See you in space.
Yes. Bye-bye.